Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to the midweek episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening, for following, for subscribing, however you consume this show. I do appreciate you very much. Today's show is sponsored by Imperial Pizza with two locations, the South Buffalo staple at 1035 Abbott Road and the new-ish location, 1665 Main Street, not far at all from Canisius College. One of the most popular and well-known pizza joints in Buffalo, and for very good reason. They're one of the best, and I do a lot of live shows there, so make sure you guys go and support them as well, just the way that they continue to support this show. The Buffalo Bills are on a bye now this week, and I feel like it has come at a really good time. Physically, this gives the Bills an opportunity to heal for this stretch run. A stretch run that's going to have the Bills entering it at 9-2, a huge victory, of course, this past Sunday over the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bills are not just winning in the AFC East, the Bills are running away with the AFC East, quite literally. As always, I am joined this time of week by my good buddy, SB Nation, Matt Warren. What's going on, man? It is a good time to be a content creator, but you know what? More than that, a fan of the Buffalo Bills. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I've been like every time I run into somebody on the street, we're recording this on Tuesday morning, and so we've got a little bit of time between the end of the Bills Chiefs game. Like people start with, "Oh, what a game on Sunday," and I'm like, "Yeah, it was a great win." And then most of them start talking about the Josh Allen touchdown, but it's just a really good time to be a Bills fan because of what's going on in the division, because of what's going on. They just beat a really good Chiefs team. They're entering the bye. I usually try to sneak in that they're only getting healthier right now because we've got several players coming back.
I don't know. I don't know what's up, buddy. I just lost you there again for a second. All right, you're back. We're going. We're keep rolling here. Yeah, I don't know. The internet, listen, when you do these shows and connect with somebody in different towns like you and I do every week, it happens on all these shows, StreamYard or just the internet could be really finicky. But yeah, you were talking about just people coming up to you, mainly the Josh Allen touchdown, but just where the Bills are standing at right now.
Yeah, and they're getting healthier, and so trying to sneak that into conversations, it's just a really nice time between all the division stuff and beating the Chiefs.
No, it's beating the Chiefs is huge. You know what? I gotta call you out, man. I'm gonna give you credit. I gave you credit last week. I'm giving you credit now. I'm gonna call you out a little bit though, because last week on the show, if my memory serves me correct, you did pick the Chiefs to win, which again, I'm gonna give you some credit for that, and that was not an outlandish pick. Kansas City Chiefs were undefeated for a reason, and as underdogs, they were nearly unbeatable. But yeah, man, you had the Chiefs edging out the Bills. So I'm glad you're wrong, and I'm sure you're glad as well.
Yeah, we've also seen Sean McDermott, at the end of some of those games kind of turtle, and he didn't do that on Sunday. And so I'm glad we saw that. I did pick the Bills over SB Nation in our picks. So I'm on the board, in writing, picking the Bills, but here I picked the Chiefs. So yeah, I thought it was a toss-up game, and I think most people did too.
Sure. Look, we're going to spend the bulk of today anyway talking about some of the bigger talking points with this team, not necessarily from just this past week, but over the course of the first 11 games. We'll call it the Bills bye week talking points. One thing I want to point out, Matt, and I don't consider myself a receipt collector, because if there's one thing I can't stand are people who sit back and trust me, whether it's personal friends of mine on Facebook, whether it's some content creators on Twitter and social media, I see it all the time. They don't ever have a take, and you have takes, and they can't wait for you to be wrong so they could just let you know that you're wrong. And I can't stand that. I'm like, well, maybe you should put yourself out there sometime and have a prediction or a couple thoughts, and you're going to be wrong from time to time. But anyway, I'm not a receipt collector. However, I can't help but think to go back to right before week 1 and watching all these studio shows, ESPN, NFL Network, CBS, you name it, and lots of mainstream, print, and just all these outlets. Nobody, next to nobody, I don't want to say nobody because that would be inaccurate. Mostly nobody picked the Bills to win this AFC East. If you go back to August or September, I have one graphic I'm putting up on the video side. I had to say this. It's from the NFL Network. Literally, there are, 4 of them picked. 2 of them picked the Dolphins. 2 of them picked the New York Jets to win the division. And I'm not just calling out NFL Network. Again, I could go down the line. Nobody picked the Bills. We who follow the team or like, yeah, sure, the Bills can absolutely win this division. It's realistic they can win this division. But in our wildest dreams, I think you would agree with this, Matt. 11 games in, I don't think the Bills would be ready to print playoff tickets right now because this division is, for all intents and purposes, over. It was over before Sunday, and now after Sunday, it is like not literally, almost completely
Pretty close.
over. I don't want to say literally because literally would mean it actually is, and it's not literally over. But essentially, it's certainly over. How shocked are you right now that the Bills, I feel like we talk about this every week, but I got to ask you again after a Chiefs win and a Jets loss last week too, by the way, which was always nice. Just the shock and the awe right now that the Bills are so far in front in the AFC East is crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Jets with, mediocre quarterback play were going to be at least contenders in the AFC East, and they haven't got mediocre quarterback play. I never was really worried about the Dolphins, except for the fact that we've seen them be able to stack early season wins. So obviously with Tua out in the early part of the season, that didn't really work out for them. So anybody who was picking the Dolphins never made a whole lot of sense to me. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they're up, I think that they can clinch the division in 2 weeks from now. They need, I think their magic number is like 2 Dolphins losses or 1 Dolphins loss and 1 Bills win, whatever it is.
That's over.
I mean, the fact that they can do that so early in the year, and really they're just playing for seeding at that point, is very remarkable.
The Kansas City game specifically, I feel like, so the Bills are 8-2, and maybe around the league, maybe in Buffalo to some extent anyway, it still felt like, okay, this is good. The Bills are handling business. The Bills are doing what they're supposed to do. They're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat. A lot of these teams that we've talked about this, that early on before the season started and you looked at the schedule, it looked a lot more daunting those first 10 games than it turned out to be. Again, the Jets have woefully underachieved. Miami has not been really good, although they're starting to turn it up a little bit. But anyway, the Dolphins have not been as good as we thought. We thought Jacksonville was going to be a really tough test because of the way they played the Bills in recent years. Seattle, we figured they were going to be a really good team, a big road test for the Bills, so on and so forth. And couldn't have been more wrong. I thought the Tennessee Titans were maybe the offseason champs, man. They added a lot of talent to that team, and I thought they were going to be, have a lot to say about it. Well, so anyway, but it hasn't turned out to be that. The Bills have beaten a lot of teams, quite frankly, that haven't been very good. They had 2 really tough tests against teams that are perceived among the better teams in the NFL, Baltimore and Houston, and they failed those tests. I mean, they got blown out in Baltimore, and they lost a close game in Houston that could have also been a blowout if Houston, I feel like they maybe took their foot off the gas a little bit, a couple breaks for the Bills. Anyway, my point is this. They lost both those games. So they needed that signature win, that statement win, that validation win, we'll call it. And that's why I think it's so important, Sunday's game. Not because necessarily it was just because it was the Chiefs. They've been in the Chiefs now 4 straight years during the regular season. This is nothing new. But people will ask, well, what's different about this year? Well, I feel like there's a lot of things different about this team this year. But to me, they needed this win during the season because they needed to validate the season that they could beat a good team. Nobody could say that anymore. The Bills, if they were questioning it themselves, they're not doing that anymore because they beat literally the league's only undefeated team. Do you agree with that? Like, this is a validation win, and how important is it for that reason?
Yeah, I think it certainly will help their confidence going forward. The term validation doesn't mean a ton to me as a fan, but like the people in the locker room need to know that they can beat really good teams too. And so like if they backed into the playoffs with excuse me at like 11-6 or 10-7 because the AFC East sucked and they lost to the 49ers, the Lions,
Right.
obviously to the Ravens and the lost to the Chiefs in that regard. Like if they lost all of those games against winning teams outside the Cardinals game in week 1, like I think there would be a lot of doubt. But having that one signature win, like that doesn't mean they're not going to beat the 49ers or Lions or whoever else is coming up on their schedule, but it just at least gives them like that one really great win where even if they end up as the 2, 3, 4 seed, they know they can beat anybody in the AFC. Maybe outside of Baltimore. We'll see what happens there as far as the Ravens go, just because I think they're set up really to beat the Bills in a very. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to like some of the bye week conversations. But I think they have the confidence now. They know they can beat a team with a winning record. That's not in week 1 against the Cardinals.
For sure. Look, I put a chart together, I love power ranking these. I didn't tell you about this. I share some outlines with you because I want Matt to have an idea of where we're going to be going with the show. You know what I mean? So at least some bullet points that I send you every week. What I didn't send you was I have a Bills top 10 power rankings going into the bye. I was thinking about it this morning. I got up early this morning. I'm like, who have been the 10 best Buffalo Bills so far this season through the first 11 weeks? Obviously, Josh Allen, of course, would be number 1. But it's a fun little exercise. Like I said, I just like to power rank everything. Let me pull this up. I'm going to read it off to the audience, and I kind of want to get your thoughts. And again, you haven't even seen this before. If this looks relatively accurate to you, if there's anything that you might change, word up to you. Again, this is my top 10 Buffalo Bills through the bye week. Obviously, Josh Allen, I got at number 1. I got Greg Rizzo at number 2. I got Christian Benford at number 3. I just think just throw the stats out. He's just a rock every week out there. Anyway, I got him at 3. I got James Cook, and I think it's got like 9 touchdowns or some crazy shit like that. I got him at 4. Teron Johnson, who's just a game impactor. I got him at 5. I got Khalil Shakir at number 6. Some of these guys we're going to talk about here, shortly. 7, I got Deion Dawkins. 8, Terrell Bernard. 9, to me, these last 2 are pleasant surprises. I probably wouldn't have pegged these in August or September. But number 9, I got Taylor Rapp. And then number 10, I got Connor McGovern at center. I think he's done a really good job. You look at that list. How does that look to you? First glance, first thoughts.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's after this game against the Chiefs. It's weird to see Cook so high. But I think that was just more the Chiefs than it was Cook. And same thing with the offensive line. I thought the offensive line played well. They just didn't have a whole lot of easy sledding against the defensive line in the run game. So I really like to see Greg Rousseau that high. I've been I'm advocating for the Bills to pay him since April or May. So I'm very glad to see him that high, and I definitely agree with that. We talked about whatever it was midseason MVP. So it was James Cook, and then like on the list was Rousseau and Benford. So very nice to see those 4 at the top.
I probably don't have Taylor Rapp pegged for my top 10 before the season starts. I can tell you that, but he's been an impactful player, man. He's made a couple big interceptions. He's been an asset. Kind of getting into these points here. I feel like the biggest talking point for me has been we spent all the offseason talking about what the Bills have lost. All these big name players. Do we really need to go down the line yet again? You know who they are. I'm not doing it. Yes. We all know who the Bills lost. So for them to be 9-2, besides Josh Allen, of course, playing at a MVP level, which we'll get into, but so many guys on this team, younger players, have taken their game to the next level in 2024. And even going back to last year when I said, well, if the Bills are going to be good, it's because they got a lot of young talent that, last year wasn't the ceiling for them. These guys got room to grow and get better. And I think that's been the single biggest key for the Bills' success this season are guys like, and this isn't necessarily in order of, who's played the best, but this group, Khalil Shakir, James Cook, even though the rushing stats are down, the way he's running the football and finding the end zone makes him a much better player, I think, this season. But yeah, James Cook, Connor McGovern, who we just ran down on that list, Christian Benford, Terrell Bernard, who, he's missed 3 games, but man, is this team different when he's out there. Taylor Rapp, Groot. These are just guys who have, and I want to talk about a couple of these maybe individually as well, but this collective group, and maybe I'm missing a couple of people as well, but they're young, they're ascending, they didn't hit their ceiling, and they're starting to get there now. And I think that's a very big reason why this team has been so good this year. These guys are just getting better. They're better than they were last year. All those guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, I would throw David Edwards in that conversation too, replacing ostensibly Mitch Morse.
Sure.
I know McGovern moved over. So he goes from that 6th offensive lineman into the starting lineup, and they have not missed a beat. So, even a guy like Damar Hamlin, who still had very serious questions about, has definitely stepped up his game. He's playing better than I thought he was going to. I just had low expectations, and I thought he's stepped up and taken his game to the next level. If we're going to talk about, that kind of group of people.
Yeah. Damar has. I got something specific about Damar. I got a question to ask you in a few minutes. I want to go back to Groot here because statistically, which I don't think stats always tell the story with a player like him, because he's just a well-rounded guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a 13, 14 sack guy. But statistically, I think he's been outstanding this year. 5.5 sacks. He's got 12 tackles for a loss, which is tied for second in the entire NFL this season. He's forced 2 fumbles. And I looked up PFF, his grades. And look, I know to always take PFF with a grain of salt. You can make a player look really good or really bad, depending on how you want to, pursue that narrative. But he's got an 89.4 PFF overall grade, which is tied for 6th best among all edge rushers this season. This is a guy who, he's still got him under contract for another year, but it kind of feels like at the rate he's going, if you don't pay him now, I'm talking about now being after this season, he's earned that big payday. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, to me, it was going into the season, will Greg Rizzo earn that next big monster contract? I think based on what we've seen through 11 games, the resounding answer is yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If they had done it before the season, it would have been like the projection. Like it would have been, it would have been projecting that he's going to have this type of season. And that's essentially what I said last offseason was like, hey, like if he has a big season, his number is going to go way higher. That's just how pass rushers work. So maybe Rousseau didn't want to sign a contract last year. Maybe he wanted to play it out and see if he could get that much, much bigger number. But either way, they're like somebody's going to pay that dude just an absolute Brinks truck of money.
Yeah, and the way he's looked this year, he's earned it. Like I said, I think he is the non-Josh Allen MVP of the Buffalo Bills through the bye week. Again, Christian Benford has been fantastic as well. He missed 1 game. Looked up his PFF grade. It's a 78. He's got the 6th best PFF grade among 75 eligible corners, meaning a guy who's played at least 50% of the snaps this season, 6th best out of 75. He's only allowed 22 receptions for 180 yards his entire season. His long, 23 yards. That's the worst pass he's gotten beat this year was for 23 yards. So he's great in coverage. He doesn't allow anyone to have a big game. And what makes him special is he's physical. His tackle grade, 85.5. That is the 2nd best among all corners in the NFL. The only one in the entire league who's got a higher tackle grade, and it's not by a lot either, is Pat Surtain with the Denver Broncos. So this guy just brings it. And what an asset he is. This isn't we need to extend this guy during the offseason podcast episode today, but guess what? The Bills need to extend this guy during the offseason, Matt Warren. They have to, man. He's great.
He's the Kyle Williams to John McCargo to Kair Elam, draft 2 in the same draft class and then extend the second guy. I'll gladly pay Christian Benford to keep playing cornerback for the Buffalo Bills. And even when he was drafted, when Kair Elam, I guess, was drafted, but when they were both drafted, we saw how the Bills were planning on staggering their cornerback contracts with Tre'Davious White's contract kind of coming to an end right around now, and then the next big cornerback contract extension. So they've set themselves up really, really well for this. I do think that's one of the reasons they waited on extending Rasul Douglas last offseason. I thought he might get a contract extension, but maybe they're going to let Douglas go, let Elam move into the starting lineup, and extend Christian Benford to see if they can get something out of that first round pick in Elam.
He's, without question, he is among those guys, the big priority. Again, Connor McGovern has stepped up. I looked up PFF. He's 8th overall out of 31 centers in terms of his overall grade. 9th run blocking, 17th pass blocking. He's been fine. They're not missing Mitch Morse at all. Terrell Bernard, I can't throw just stats out there because it goes beyond stats. Dan Orlovsky from ESPN. If guys, if you haven't seen this yet and you're on social media, go find him on Twitter. He's got a clip that's almost 2 minutes long, and it shows Terrell Bernard. It's not him making a tackle. It's not him forcing a fumble or getting a sack or having an interception. By the way, he had an interception. He had a sack in that game. He shows him communicating to his other players about a play that's coming. Just, he's your captain for a reason. He's such a smart player, athletic. He's gifted. God, this guy is a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker just in his second year as a starter. And if he can stay durable and be out there, this team's just so much better. And then the other guy among that group I clumped in is Khalil Shakir. 87. This is his pace right now, Matt. I don't know if you know this or not. 87 catches for 926 yards. He missed a game and a half. He didn't play against Houston, and he barely played against the Jets. He's got 462 yards after the catch, which is third best in the NFL. Only Jamar Chase and Alvin Kamara have more yards after the catch. I'm surprised he's this good, but I'm not that surprised because I saw it last year. This guy just catches everything. He don't look like he's fast. And then he's got the football, and it goes from a 1 yard gain to a 9 yard gain in the blink of an eye. It's weird almost how wiggly and deceptive he is. What a big, big asset he's been to this offense.
Yeah, he has that contact balance. It's very rare to see him go down just from a hit or something. And you're seeing that he's become number one receiver is the wrong way to put it, but the go-to receiver for this team. When on that 4th and 2 Josh Allen touchdown run where he put on the Superman cape, it was designed to go to Shakir on a man beater to the outside right flat. They designed a 4th and 2 to beat the Kansas City Chiefs around Khalil Shakir. He caught that one pass where he got hurt taking the hit from the safety.
Huge catch.
These are the plays that defined the game, and almost all of them went through Khalil Shakir, or at least were designed to go through Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up too, because if he doesn't come down with that ball, and it would have been, how mad can you be that with that hit? If he doesn't hold on to it, the Bills, it was 4th and 2, so that made Sean McDermott have a decision. If Khalil doesn't come down with that ball, there is no real decision. The Bills go up 5, and you hopefully the Bills go up 5, and you hope that the Bills can somehow keep Patrick Mahomes out of the end zone. So yeah, really big. I guess what I'm saying overall is the big talking point here, the general one, is Sean McDermott's ability to develop talent, it feels like, might be his best trait. We talk about how great he is with the secondary, and he is. But I just think as a whole, maybe one of Sean McDermott, and he's got flaws, but one of Sean McDermott's best traits is just, it seems like that next guy up it's a real thing. But these aren't next guys up. These are studs. And they just really have developed under Sean McDermott. He's a good player developer, isn't he?
Yeah, we haven't even talked about Dorian Williams or some of these other guys that have kind of stepped into major roles for this team without, they're obviously a little bit more limited than the people they're replacing, but they've done a really admirable job. I mean, even like it's not developing him, but like guy like Dawson Knox coming in for Dalton Kincaid in this last game and really just kind of elevating his game to match the moment. I mean, I don't think it can be understated.
Before we get to a break, you talked about Damar Hamlin. I kind of wanted to put this off the side. I want to ask you a question here. I agree with you. Look, I'm going to be honest with you, and it's kind of, it's sort of well known at this point. I was really, really hard on Damar over the first month. I thought he kind of overreacted, but at the time, I'm like, I think Damar Hamlin stinks as a starter. I'm just good. That's what I said. Okay. And I said he was an awful starter, actually, or a terrible starter, something like that. That was my take. That was my thought at the time. And I've been open and honest about it. I've also been very honest and said that I think he's really come on. I think for the last month, he's been perfectly fine. Good to perfectly fine. Okay. The floor is gotten higher. I still think the ceiling's low with him. I don't think he's got a high ceiling, but I think the floor has risen for him with his play. There was a time where I said, the only thing this dude, could be good for is hopefully not letting someone get a 70-yard touchdown, get behind him, which he hasn't done, but he's been better. And you know that. Everybody knows that. He's played reasonably well. I looked it up, like his stats. PFF, 61.9. So out of 67 eligible safeties, he's 35th. Middle of the pack. Running, 41 out of 67 run defense. Coverage, 39 out of 67. Right around the middle of the pack-ish. One stat that he's been really good at is tackling. He's 9th best out of 67 with safeties with tackling. We're at the bye. I feel like a lot of people are wondering if the Bills are going to bring back Micah Hyde this season. This feels like maybe later today, matter of fact, it's a Tuesday or whatever on the start of a bye week. But if the Bills were going to bring Micah Hyde back, it's going to be now. Short of maybe an injury at the end of the season, you could always have him, break glass in case of emergency, kind of like A.J. Klein was last year. But if you want him here with the designs of being your starter for the rest of the season, that time is now with the Bills being on a bye. I guess, so the question I'm asking you is, do you think the Bills should stick with Damar Hamlin, or do you think the Bills should call Micah Hyde right now? Because it's now or never, I feel like.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. If we get to the San Francisco week and they haven't signed Hyde, at least to the practice squad, I think it would be unlikely he would come back again, unless you're pulling AJ Klein out of the RV, like, to use that kind of analogy. Like,
sure.
I think they like what they've seen out of Damar, and they're probably going to just stay status quo. It might have more to do with Cole Bishop too. Like if they see that Bishop is capable of kind of stepping into a Damar Hamlin role if he does get hurt, maybe they don't need to call Micah. They're much more familiar with how much of a step Micah Hyde has lost inside that building than we are too. And so
sure,
if for whatever reason it doesn't come together, whether it's on Micah's side or the Bills' side, they have a lot more information at this point than we do, which is always the case. I know that, but like we've seen kind of how far Jordan Poyer has fallen, even from last year, like to this year over in Miami. And so if, Hyde was, say, struggling through with some injuries last year and was in the training room all the time, and, he's tired of it, and the Bills are like, maybe we can't trust him to stay healthy. I think that is a really real thing that wouldn't necessarily be reflected on the field too. And so I think they're probably going to end up staying with Damar. Whereas for the last month, all the smoke I've been hearing has been around Micah Hyde coming back. But since that Chiefs game, nobody's been talking about it. Obviously, they've been talking about how great the win over the Chiefs was. But like, we'll have to see if that smoke leads to some fire here real soon.
I mostly agree with you. I disagree with you about one thing, though.
Okay.
I do not think the Bills, and again, you're right. Look, this team has more information than all of us, not just you and I, but all of us.
Right.
Nobody knows more than the team itself. I feel like the Bills do not want to have to go to Cole Bishop this season. I feel like Cole Bishop's the future. Like week 1, 2025 season, I expect Cole Bishop to be starting at safety. Okay. I want to be clear about that. Right now, this season, as a rookie, I don't think the Bills want to have to go to Cole Bishop. I don't think the Bills would feel comfortable going to Cole Bishop. So let's just say they don't sign Micah Hyde now and Damar Hamlin gets hurt, and we hope that doesn't happen, of course. But if he did, I think you would call Micah Hyde before you would go to Cole Bishop this season. I hate to put one play on especially on a rookie, but we've played 11 games the Bills have played this season. A wide receiver has gotten behind them for a really long touchdown one time in 11 games. Who was that safety? It was Cole Bishop. How many games did Cole Bishop start? One.
One game.
Exactly. I do not think I love Cole Bishop, man. I'm a Cole Bishop guy. I think he's going to be a good safety. I just don't think his time is in 2024. So in that case, I think even if they stuck with Hamlin, but something happened to him, or maybe even Rapp, maybe you go to Micah Hyde over Cole Bishop this season. Besides that, I do agree with you. I do think they will and probably should stick with Micah Hyde. I mean, with Damar Hamlin. I think people, including myself at times, have been more in love with the thought of Micah Hyde. Think about Micah Hyde. But, you go back to last year, and I looked it up. His numbers last year are no better than what Damar Hamlin's are this year. Grade-wise, he overall graded out a little bit better, but he was bad against the run last year, which surprised me. And his tackling was bad last year, which surprised me. I've always known him as a good run support, tackling safety, but statistically, he was not good last year. He was better in coverage a little bit than Damar. I don't think it's happening. Maybe if the Bills were 6-5 and they were struggling, giving up some big plays, you go to him. But what's the phrase? Why fix something that's not broken? The secondary is not broken. So, I think they're sticking with Damar as well, too. So, anyway, all right, let's take a quick break, come back. How about we talk a little bit of Josh Allen? We're halfway through a podcast. We barely even talked about Josh Allen because there's so much more to this football team than just him. But that said, is he the front runner right now for MVP? We'll talk about that right after the break. All right, I am back here with Matt Warren from SB Nation. I don't have him in our notes, and we're probably not going to talk about him today because he's not a young ascending player anymore. But I do want to shout out Ed Oliver. He's another guy that I've been kind of hard on. Went back and watched that All-22 film, and the two things from the Chiefs game that really popped at me that I didn't really catch in real time was, A, I thought Osiris Torrance, he got beat a little bit. He lost a couple of reps, but I thought he more than held his own against an elite all-world defensive tackle in Chris Jones, and he was matched up with him a lot. And then the other thing, I thought Ed Oliver, I thought he played an absolutely fantastic game. He was a menace. He only had one tackle. Who gives a shit? Stats, throw him out the garbage or throw him out the window when it comes sometimes with Ed Oliver. And this is one of those times. I just thought he was really, really outstanding. All right, anyway, Josh Allen right now. We're at the bye week. I don't care if he wins MVP. I want to be clear about that. I've never cared. But this is now not early in the season. It's always, it's only October or whatever. Now we're about 2/3 through the season. Josh Allen could be the front runner for MVP. And it's funny because his stats compared to other years are kind of meh. Like he's got 2,543 yards passing right now, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks, 98.2 rating. He's ran for 318 yards and 5 touchdowns. Statistically, and this is funny, Lamar Jackson is crushing Josh Allen. Like he's got like 300 more yards passing. He's thrown for 7 more touchdowns. He's thrown for 2 less interceptions. He's got 270 more yards rushing. But last year it was like, well, stats don't matter. Lamar Jackson, great quarterback on a great team, the best team in the AFC, and he wins MVP. Last year, stats don't matter. This year, if you're not pro Josh Allen win MVP or you're pro give Lamar the third, all of a sudden stats matter a lot more. Where are you at with this? If you, Matt Warren from SB Nation, had an MVP vote to cast right now, there's still time, but right now, does it go to Josh Allen? And I expect you to give me an honest answer, not a homer answer. You're going to tell me what you think. If you had a vote, is Josh Allen your MVP right now?
Yeah, and it's not particularly close, to be honest. I thought he was the MVP last year over Lamar Jackson, but
Mhm.
because of how the records shook out for teams and everything like that, I mean, it made sense that it went to Lamar Jackson. But Jackson's team has 4 losses. They're not even leading their division right now. It's been a very long time since the MVP came from a team that didn't win their own division. I think it might be all the way back to 2012 when Adrian Peterson won it. So I would have to go back and recheck that, which is also the last time a non-quarterback won it. So weird stuff. Anyway, he was also averaging like 175 rushing yards per game, which is nuts. But so all of that to say is I think that the stats being in Lamar Jackson's favor probably don't help him in this particular case, especially because people see Derrick Henry as another marquee player on that team. And what
Sure.
Josh Allen's doing is without Stephon Diggs. And like we talked about all that stuff before the season where they lost everybody and they're going to take the step back. And so I think more people are willing to believe that Josh Allen's putting on the cape this year as opposed to say Lamar doing that last year. The other thing, if you're going to win an MVP, you need to have marquee film. You need to have all of those people that are voting on that, all 50 voters watching, some big highlights from your season. And so like last year when he opens against the Jets and he has all those lowlights and, people's opinion right off the bat is like tanked. When he runs that pass or runs that fourth and down and two, passing attempt turned, rushing touchdown, like that's going to be played on loop for the next 6 months. Like it's probably going
Yeah.
to be played on loop, past Josh Allen's Hall of Fame induction. Like, I mean, it's just that marquee moment that I think a lot of MVP voters and Pro Bowl voters and all pro voters are all going to kind of hang their hat on. Like, he put this team on his back without Dalton Kincaid, without Keon Coleman, without his starting right tackle, and willed his team to a victory over the undefeated, mighty Kansas City Chiefs. And so I think all of that kind of narrative building, in addition to the fact that the biggest narrative against him all along has been that he can't protect the ball, and he's been doing that this year. Like, it's just every single narrative is pointing towards Josh Allen as the MVP right now, and he finally once again took back over the betting odds favorite on that.
I don't want this to turn into a Patrick Moran anti Lamar Jackson rant here. Okay. I think he's won 2 MVPs and maybe he didn't deserve last year, but he's won 2 MVPs. And I think he's still underrated in some ways because people just don't regard him. Sometimes he's even one of the top 3 to 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But Nick Wright put out a stat, and look, you could go fact check Nick Wright. I ain't fact checking this, but he put it out there, so I'll share it with you.
Okay.
When he plays Lamar, when they play the Steelers, which is their big rival in the division, the Chiefs, which are the cream of the crop in the AFC, or any playoff team, for his career, Lamar Jackson's record is 4-12, and he's got more turnovers than touchdowns. If that's accurate, and I don't think Nick Wright puts that out there as a lie, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But if that's accurate, that's a pretty big indictment. That tells me that this guy just kills the Browns. He kills the Raiders. Well, they lost to the Raiders, so maybe that's not a good team.
The Browns too.
He did. He shit all over the Bills. Sure, but you know what I'm saying. But it's like he loses. He does not play well against good teams. I agree with you about the highlight reel too. That is going to lead off. You need to have highlight reel plays in big moments too. And this was not. That would have been a great play no matter what. But if that's the first drive of the game and it's 4th and 2 and the Bills go for it and he scores, it doesn't mean the same. That put the Bills up 2 scores. That essentially won the Bills the football game. So it was a big play, and it was a big play that mattered. I agree with you. Again, I don't care. I don't care if Josh Allen wins MVP. I know a lot of people won't like to hear that. It doesn't mean nothing to me personally, but I think he deserves it. So if you do care, right now anyway, I certainly think he deserves it.
We talked about how the Bills have lost to like 2 contending teams and like maybe they hadn't proved that they were there. The Ravens lost to the Raiders and the Browns, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL right now. And so just pointing to that, you can just say like, this is why. Like, yeah, the Steelers over the years have just absolutely owned Lamar Jackson. If you go back and look at Mike Tomlin's defensive scheme, it's very well defended against Lamar Jackson in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Look, well, you know what? If I do care about it in any way, it would be in this context. It would be unfair, but there's going to be critics. If the Bills go another, say, 2-3 years where Josh is top one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but they don't get to a Super Bowl and he doesn't win an MVP, there's going to be people out there, critics, haters, who are going to say that he's overrated, that he's basically more talented Phillip Rivers. That's kind of like what you're going to hear. So maybe winning an MVP will crush that narrative. Obviously, getting into a Super Bowl would be the most important thing, but it would be hard to say, somewhere down the road, Josh Allen, one of the best 3 quarterbacks ever play football, but he never won an MVP. He never even got to a Super Bowl, let alone won a Super Bowl. Yes. So I guess from that perspective, winning an MVP would be important. And look, the ball's in his court because he is the betting favorite right now. And you look at the rest of the schedule and you play the Patriots twice, you play the Jets at home. Those are, 3 games where you have a really good opportunity to play well. Detroit, that's going to be a shootout. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like the Bills may or may not win that game, but I would expect Josh to play well in Detroit. Yeah,
they have high-profile games coming up still against the 49ers and Lions, to your point. Like, he can continue to build that narrative, as we keep using that term. Like, he can continue to build that narrative in some major league games. And against the 49ers, it's at home on a Sunday night. Like, I mean, if he has another back-to-back great game with the bye in between, like, the train may have already left the station by then.
Sure. I would say we could agree on this. It's early in the season. It felt like it was changing every week. I would say at this point, it's his to lose. So if you do care about the MVP, I think it's his trophy to lose over these last 6 games. All right. So we don't know if it's going to be this week or not, or the week coming after the bye, I should say. But Matt Milano's return is now imminent. 21-day window. I personally think he plays against Frisco, but even if he don't, he'll probably be out there the next week in LA. How do you feel that they're going to use him upon his return? There's a lot of talk that he might get eased into the lineup, some packages, some situations. Dorian Williams has not been a sore thumb on defense this season. That said, this is an all-pro linebacker. This is a big, if he gets back to himself, even by the end of the season, this is such a big addition. This is like going out and getting in a Pro Bowl or an all-pro even linebacker at the trade deadline, because he has not played it down this season, just like kind of like the Mari Cooper of the defense in addition for this team down the stretch. How big is this return, and how do you foresee Matt Milano being introduced back to the defense? Do you just, if he's healthy, you want him to get out there and just play a lot, or are you easing him in?
A little bit of both. Dorian Williams has played well this year, but again, we talked about, like, he's got a low ceiling and a pretty decent floor. Matt Milano's got a much higher ceiling. I think he can do a lot more, especially against the pass. Some of those long runs that they've given up, I think Matt Milano's in a better position than Dorian Williams will be. So I think it's going to be an important aspect of this defense moving forward. As far as easing him in, I think ideally they want to put him in for like a whole drive, and like maybe not every drive, but like, say they start him, the first drive, and then they give Dorian Williams a drive instead of like subbing him in and out. But then if the 49ers game's close at the end, so I could see him subbing in and doing like third down stuff. It shouldn't be conditioning that's a problem for him, because unlike the leg break last year, like the injury he's had now is an arm break, so or the muscle tear, and so he should be able to have been doing conditioning all along. I'm not necessarily worried about him sucking wind. I'm more just worried about easing him back in because he hasn't played in a very long time.
Yeah, it's a big difference coming back from an upper body injury as opposed to a lower body, and we've seen lower body injuries with the Bills with Vaughn and Trey twice. It takes time to get back, but there's no reason once the conditioning is there and the juices are going that he's not back up to speed. I could see him assuming he plays against Frisco, which might be a big assumption at this point. We don't know that. But yeah, 40% of the snaps maybe. And by the time they get to LA, certainly Detroit, he's probably going to be that guy. He's out there, ideally, if they can both stay healthy, with Bernard every snap. Another veteran here that I got in my notes that I think is worth talking about, a bye week talking point, Von Miller. But now he missed 4 games because of the suspension, but Von Miller was garbage last year for the Bills. He was a liability out there. He did nothing, 0. And he knows it. And I think he talked about it during the offseason. He was embarrassed. I think Von Miller was embarrassed by how he looked last offseason. Not the case this season, thankfully, for the Bills. Again, he missed 4 games, so he's played in 7. 4 sacks this year. He's got 11 quarterback hurries, 76.9 PFF grade, which is 19th best out of 121 eligible edge rushers, and he's 15th in pass rushing productivity. He's getting to the quarterback. I've also noticed he's been pretty good against the run, actually. He's had a couple nice stops in the running game as well, or at least contributed to that success. Yeah, this is definitely a good storyline to this point anyway. Von Miller has been, he's still got some juice left.
Yeah, and he had a sack against Mahomes, right? Like, yeah, I think he did. He had a cleanup sack where somebody was stepping up, but he's playing better than certainly last year. I mean, I remember at the end of the season, he's like, I probably shouldn't have even played last season. To your point, like he was embarrassed. He's questioning Brandon Beane and the Bills coaching staff by saying that. So, like, he definitely wanted to put that out into the ether, saying like, "Hey, I wasn't really myself this year." But I think he's starting to get closer to back where he was. And again, as we talked about, even last year, like if 12 months from his injury, he starts to ramp up and is like the old school Von Miller by the time the playoffs come around, like that's really what we want. We didn't see that last year. It took him longer than I think most people anticipated to come back. But I think maybe this year you're starting to see that. And so as long as he can continue to stay at that nice level during these big games, they can get him more rest in maybe some of those games against the Patriots and the Jets, and let some of the younger guys take those reps. And then he hits the ground running in the playoffs, man, that would be really ideal for this Bills pass rush that has still continued to underperform. That the pass rush is just, as a whole, hasn't really been very good. I'll say they've been good, just not very good or great.
I want to throw this up too. Statistically, I don't know, hopefully people can kind of see this out there. The Bills have they haven't been really good at much of anything offensively or defensively compared to the league. Now, I know if you get to more advanced metrics, DVOA and things like that, the Bills look better. But just regular stats, dude, they're like they're only in the top 5 in one thing, and that's like sacks allowed on offense. But like they're middle of the pack. I'm not going to go through all these. It would take forever. But you can kind of see it. I mean, they're good, and they're good at stopping the pass, passing yards per play. They're good at not getting sacked. They're pretty good in the red zone. And the most important thing, of course, is that they're 3rd in the NFL in scoring with points. But yeah, dude, statistically, this is not like a great football team. They're not dominating statistically pretty much anywhere. It's almost borderline weird, which kind of speaks to what might be my second biggest 5-week point here. I think the young ascending talent stepping up, leveling up has been the biggest, but this team's depth has been such a big factor this year because of the injuries. This was supposed to be a much thinner football team, again, because they lost so many guys and their backups are just so much more unproven this year. But, Matt Milano has not played. Dorian Williams has played well. Bernard missed time. Spector was okay. He was serviceable at least. Matt Collins, guess what? When Matt Collins is not your wide receiver 1, he's a pretty damn good football player. When he's your 4th or 5th receiver, he's giving you some plays. That Miami game, he had a couple of huge plays. Yeah. He's been good, solid depth. Dawson Knox shouldn't be depth because he makes $1 gazillion, but guess what? He is. He's not the starter. And with Dalton Kincaid down on Sunday, he had 4 catches for 40 yards. He's played well. If you look at him in that role, Kyrie Lam had a start. It wasn't even active Sunday, healthy scratch too. But he started the game when Bedford missed. He was fine. That hurt the team. Ingram had that Miami game, 2 picks, a pick 6. So Ingram has had a role in success. Dwayne Carter, the rookie, Juwan Smoot, these guys aren't starters. They were really coming on. Both are hurt right now. Cam Lewis had to play a month for Teron Johnson. Kind of struggled at times, but he had, especially early, the Arizona game, then Miami, those first 2 games, Cam Lewis was really solid, and then his play tapered off, but he made a couple nice plays on Sunday. He actually had a couple big licks on defense, a big special teams tackle too. I'm surprised, borderline stunned by how much depth this team still has, which maybe we should circle back to Sean, because he coaches these guys up, and the depth has not been a problem this year.
Yeah. Sean McDermott, I've often said, is one of the NFL's better head coaches for 6.5 days a week. I wasn't always sure about his game day management, late game management, but I always thought that his teams were prepared. His team, like that, we talked about the going for however many years it was without getting blown out in a game. Like, they just always seem to be doing the right thing. Even Damar Hamlin coming in, he's always in the right place. Like, he might be limited athletically. So McDermott has always been good about that kind of stuff. And so he definitely deserves his flowers on those developmental things and the depth pieces.
He does, for sure. Let me ask you this. Off the top of your head, Sean McDermott should at least be in consideration for Coach of the Year right now, I think. Mike Tomlin, that day, he's got that team. He's got that team playing great. He's right there at the top. I would say O'Connell from Minnesota, too. I mean, they're supposed to have a rookie quarterback. He gets hurt, and you got Sam Darnold, and that team's 9-2, same record as the Bills after 11 weeks. But I feel like Sean, maybe he doesn't win. Like, Josh Allen is the front runner for MVP. I don't think Sean McDermott is the front runner for Coach of the Year. But you agree that he deserves to be in the conversation?
Yeah, I do. The stones that Mike Tomlin had to do the quarterback changes that he did between the injury to Russell Wilson at the beginning of the year and then going away from Justin Fields has been, really remarkable. I like all of the guys you mentioned. Another one, Dan Campbell, certainly should be in the conversation again, just because they're just doing so much up there the right way in Detroit. But yeah, he deserves more consideration than he gets. I haven't heard anybody really put him, and I haven't looked at the odds, but I haven't really heard anybody put him into that conversation nationally. So, we'll see. But I think that is part of what happened to Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes and what happened with Bill Belichick with Tom Brady, is that when you see those massively successful quarterbacks, you tend to give them more of the credit than necessarily the coach. But I think if you watch this team week in and week out, you see the job that the whole coaching staff really is doing, developing everybody around Josh Allen, and they did develop Josh Allen too.
I inadvertently do a stray at Dan Campbell by not even including him.
Oh, well,
that team's just so good, man. They blow everybody out. It's kind of unfair to hold that against Dan Campbell. Plus, they lost Hutchinson. It would have been easy for that team to unravel a little bit after losing him, but they certainly have not done that. Yeah, you're right. When a quarterback plays like that, like Josh Allen has, the Coach of the Year. But again, you go back to the very beginning there. Nobody picked the Bills to win the AFC East, outside of Buffalo anyway. And this is a team that is the 2 seed at 9-2. And depending on how the end of the season plays out, they can end up being the number 1 seed. I think if they got the number 1 seed, then I think Sean McDermott could really be in business for that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, last thing I got is coordinators. Both sides of the football. Brand new coordinator in Bobby Babbage. Joe Brady's first full year as offensive coordinator. I don't know if this is a talking point. Maybe it's more of a question, but we're 11 weeks in now. How do you see the job that they're doing? Like, if this was a class, if this was school, and you had to grade Bobby Babbage and you had to grade Joe Brady, where would you have them at right now?
I'm pretty happy with both of them. There's obviously things that both sides of the ball can clean up. The Bills are 3rd in points per game and scoring percentage. They're 4th in points per drive. Those are those metrics that you really, really want to see. They're scoring a ton of points. But they're also 10th in third down conversion. They're 10th in yards per drive. So I think it's a solid B for Brady. If you get your Shakir and Cooper back, to full strength. I think you might be approaching like B plus territory. With Joe Brady, I don't know if you want to weigh in on the offense before I go to defense.
Yeah. No.
I don't think it's up in like your A plus territory yet. I just don't.
I agree.
There's just too many.
I'm gonna give you a hot take though. Let me give you a bold prediction, a hot take here. This is not a bold prediction, hot take episode, but I think Bobby Babich is going to be a coaching candidate this season, this cycle.
Okay.
Not in the future, this season, January, February. I could see Bobby Babich being a head coaching candidate this cycle, like a legitimate coaching candidate this cycle.
That's very quick.
Sure.
I know. We're pretty sure that's why they promoted him last year, as other teams were going to poach him for defensive coordinator. But he's only been a coordinator for one season, so like that would be a very like rocket ship. I think my favorite stat that I wrote down for this entire episode was the offense's starting field position is tied for second in the entire league, and I'm giving that to Bobby Babich, obviously. So they're second in turnover percentage, and a lot of that is obviously what the coordinator's doing. So I give him an absolute ton of credit for the job he's doing with the defense, especially with all the turnover that they had with two brand new safeties in the back, getting those linebackers up. Coincidentally, two positions that Bobby Babich has coached, safeties and linebacker, have really stepped up this year. If we had a little bit more, I mean, they're 15th in yards per play allowed. They still give up chunk plays. They're not great at generating pressure and QB knockdowns and QB hurries and all that stuff. So there's still room for improvement, but I'm giving him like a solid B right now. They're 20th in the NFL in third down conversion percentage. Like, that's not good.
They've actually improved though, because they were even worse at that. They've actually improved over the last couple of weeks. But sure, man, two new safeties, Teron down for a month, but missed 3 games, and this defense has still been, all things considered, pretty damn good. That could be like an entire episode, certainly a longer segment, talking about Bobby Babich and how long he will be in Buffalo. We'll do that another time. Before we get out of here, you got anything? Like, is there any talking point or anything that I didn't hit on?
Yeah, I've got a few like snap count things that I like talking about, just because it shows more about who the team values and how they value them. So do you know who's taken the most snaps on defense this season?
Dorian Williams.
It's Damar Hamlin. So they don't take him off the field at the end of games during blowouts. He hasn't been injured. And so that's why he's ahead of like Taylor Rapp, who was out with his concussion. He's ahead of Rasul Douglas and some of those other guys. So I just want to to say that like he's taken more snaps than anybody on this defense. Pretty cool. Dorian Williams is up there too. The leading wide receiver still Mac Hollins, 65% of the offensive snaps. I think Keon was like right with him and then got hurt, obviously. The biggest thing I saw on offense was James Cook is under 50% of the snaps. And I don't think most folks that watch this team would think that he's under 50% of the offensive snaps. But he only had 37% against Kansas City. They just didn't really use him a lot. I don't even think he was the leading running back snap getter against the Chiefs. Obviously, they were in pass mode a lot, especially like at the end of the first half. So yeah, Ty Johnson did play a lot in that game. So seeing James Cook under 50%, when you see his numbers and you see how often they're actually giving him the ball, it's pretty cool. So that was neat. And then the other one was you just mentioned Cam Lewis has been playing a lot in place of other folks, and so he's at 54% of the defensive snaps. So I wouldn't have expected him to be that high either, whether going into the season or even now. And so just kind of seeing like kind of some of those numbers was really interesting to me.
You know what? I had a brain fart. I should have never said Dorian Williams, only because he comes off the field when the Bills go to a dime defense, so he's not out there for that package. That makes sense.
He's up there.
Look, I'll give you a fun take. I ain't mad that Mac Hollins is playing as much as he is anymore. I just don't want him to be the guy who's going to get 8 to 9 targets a football game. But he's a great run blocker. He comes up with a couple plays per game. I'm all right with him being out there. That doesn't bother me. The James Cook thing to me is very interesting. You know, I can see this game specifically. Ty Johnson is a much better pass blocker. So I know when it's obvious passing situations and they could not run, especially up the middle against the Chiefs. So I could see that. Ray Davis has had moments, at least certain weeks, certain matchups where he's effective. Did not happen against the Chiefs. And one of the weirder things, like for this Bills offense, which has been mostly really good, again, they're third in the league in scoring, but one element about this offense that has surprised me I guess maybe in a little bit of negative way. Well, two things. Number one, Dalton Kincaid has not been the factor we all thought he would be this year. And I also thought James Cook would have been a bigger factor in the passing game. And that hasn't really materialized much this year as well. Now, what I love about James Cook is that he looks like Earl Campbell at times running the football all of a sudden right now. This dude just don't like to go down, man. He's been a bull. So for that reason, I don't like his play's been great. I like him a lot, in some ways better than last year, even though he's better statistically. That is interesting, though. His snap count. If you're the agent for James Cook, I don't know how you feel about that. You know, you get the rock more, get more opportunities, get paid. That's going to be, look, it's a given. And I hate projecting in the future. This season's going on and it's a fun one. So God damn it, Patrick. But you know, they want to sign Rizzo. That's a given. You know they want Benford back. You know they want Bernard to stay long-term. Shakir. They don't want to lose any of these guys. And I certainly don't think they want to necessarily lose James Cook. But there will come a point where we talk where it's going to be like, is James Cook worth a big contract? I think all those other guys we mentioned definitely are. But with the way the Bills run this offense and the roles and Ray Davis, you know, still have 2 more years left on his rookie deal when James Cook contract is up. That's going to be an interesting little point down the road to get into with James Cook. Does he get that bigger second contract with the Bills? So
I don't think he does. They've shown their hand on that. They did not extend Singletary. And actually, I'm not 100% sure they're going to extend Khalil Shakir because they didn't do that with Gabe Davis, even though we know Davis has like his limitations and stuff like that. But, you know, we've seen them we saw them get rid of Stephon Diggs. We saw them let Gabe Davis leave. Like, I think they obviously kept Dawson Knox when they might not, maybe shouldn't have. But I just don't necessarily know that Shakir's a lock to get that deal.
Unrelated to the Bills, as we sign off here, some breaking news, NFL AFC East related here. Adam Schefter reports the New York Football Jets have just fired general manager Joe Douglas. So
you hate to see it.
There's that. There's that.
Bills fan, you really do. As a Bills fan, you really do hate to see it because I think he's done a very good job over there. So
absolutely. I agree with you. And I hope Aaron Rodgers comes back for another season. So
oh man, that'd be so fun.
Completely. All right, man. That's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you follow Matt on Twitter at MattRichWarren. By the way, little behind the scenes shout out. Matt's hooked me up the last couple weeks before the Dolphins game, before this Chiefs game. I had SB Nation bloggers, podcasters on the show, which has worked out well for the Bills because they've won both times. But Merrick Brave from Finsider, he was great. And Caleb James, I had on last week with the Chiefs. He predicted a Chiefs win, but he was really, you know, it was a fun conversation, and I got a sense that this game meant more to Buffalo than Kansas City.
Oh, yeah.
And I got that sense talking to a Chiefs guy, and I kind of feel like that meant a lot. But I'm good with that. But anyway, those guys were really good. So hopefully I'll get some more SB Nation people down the road leading into some of these game previews. But anyway, for Matt, I am Patrick. Thank you very much for watching, for listening. If you are not yet subscribed, please go ahead and do that. I'll be back, brand new episode tomorrow.